The warning lights bathed the control room in red as Commander Vexkan stared at his displays. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The readings made no sense at all. "What am I looking at?" he muttered, tapping the screen with his clawed finger. The numbers kept changing, jumping around like crazy. One second they showed a massive object moving through space. The next second, nothing was there. His assistant, a young officer named Tikmora, leaned over his shoulder. "Sir, the sensors are picking up movement in Sector 7, but the readings are impossible." Vexkan had been monitoring space for 20 years. He had seen asteroids, enemy ships, space debris, and even the occasional comet. But this was different. This thing was moving faster than anything should be able to move, faster than light speed, which was supposed to be impossible. "Run a full diagnostic," he ordered. "Check all systems." The diagnostic came back clean. Every sensor, every computer, every piece of equipment was working perfectly, but the readings still made no sense. On the main screen, a blip appeared for just a moment, then it was gone. Then it appeared again, thousands of miles away. It was like watching a ghost jump from place to place. "Sir," Tikmora said, her voice shaking slightly, "the object is heading toward Kepler Station." Vexkan felt his blood turn cold. Kepler Station was their most important military base. It housed the Empire's best weapons, their most advanced technology, and over 50,000 soldiers. If something was heading there, it meant trouble. He grabbed the communication device. "Kepler Station, this is Deep Space Monitor 7. We have an unknown contact approaching your position." The reply came instantly. "Monitor 7, we show nothing on our screens." "Are you sure?" "Positive. The object is moving at impossible speeds. We can barely track it." At Kepler Station, alarms started blaring. The commanding officer, General Mordek, rushed to the control center. His screens showed empty space, but the warning systems were going crazy. "Where is it?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir," replied his communications officer. "It keeps disappearing and reappearing. Our targeting systems can't lock onto it." Back at the monitoring station, Vexkan watched as the blip moved closer to Kepler Station. With each jump, it covered distances that should have taken hours in just seconds. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Nothing moves like that." The object suddenly stopped, right outside Kepler Station. For the first time, the sensors got a steady reading, but what they saw made no sense. The ship, if it was a ship, was unlike anything in their databases. It wasn't made of metal or any material they recognized. It seemed to shimmer and change, like it was made of liquid light. "Sir," Tikmora said quietly, "I've checked our entire database. Every ship design from every known species in the galaxy. This doesn't match anything." Vexkan stared at the screen. In all his years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The Empire had records of every species, every ship design, every piece of technology in known space. But this thing was completely unknown. "Send an emergency alert to High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we have a first contact situation, and tell them this isn't like anything we've ever seen before." Admiral Zormek had seen many battles in his long career. He had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems. He had witnessed the destruction of planets and the birth of new technologies. But nothing had prepared him for what he was seeing now. The unknown ship moved like it was dancing in space. It spun around in a complete circle, without slowing down even a little bit. Then it shot forward at incredible speed, only to stop instantly and change direction. No ship should be able to do that. The forces involved would crush any crew inside. "Hand tear the ship apart. Analyze those movements," Zormek ordered his science officer, Veltara. Veltara's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Her face grew pale as the numbers appeared on her screen. "Sir, the G-forces from those maneuvers should be over 300 times normal gravity. Any living creature would be turned into paste." "And the ship?" "The ship should have broken apart. The stress on the hull from those turns would destroy even our strongest battleships." But the mysterious vessel continued its impossible dance. It accelerated from 0 to light speed in less than a second. Then it stopped just as quickly and moved in the opposite direction. The ship seemed to ignore every rule of physics that the Empire had spent centuries learning. Lieutenant Caxton, the youngest officer on the bridge, pointed at his screen with a shaking hand. "Admiral, look at this. The ship isn't using any engines." Zormek walked over to examine the readings. Every ship in the galaxy used some form of propulsion, fusion drives, antimatter engines, or gravity manipulators. But this ship showed no engine signatures at all. No energy emissions, no exhaust, no gravitational distortions. "Then how is it moving?" Zormek asked. "I don't know, sir. It's like the ship is telling space itself to move around it." The Admiral rubbed his forehead. He had studied every type of spacecraft for 40 years. He knew the engine signatures of over 200 different species. But this ship was completely silent. It moved through space like a fish through water, smooth and effortless. "What about the hull material?" he asked Veltara. She shook her head. "Nothing in our database matches it. It's not metal, not ceramic, not any composite we know. Our sensors can barely detect it. Sometimes it looks solid, sometimes it looks almost transparent." The ship suddenly changed shape right before their eyes. What had looked like a smooth oval became angular and sharp. Then it shifted again, becoming something completely different. "Did you record that?" Zormek demanded. "Yes, sir, but I don't understand how it's possible. The ship just changed, like it was rebuilding itself." Fear began to spread through the bridge crew. These were experienced officers who had faced enemy fleets without flinching. But they had never encountered anything like this. Their most advanced technology looked like stone tools compared to this mysterious vessel. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Rexdal, "what if this ship is from outside our galaxy? What if it comes from somewhere we've never been?" Zormek stared at the impossible ship on his screen. It continued its graceful movements, completely ignoring the laws of physics that governed everything else in the universe. For the first time in his career, the Admiral felt truly afraid. They weren't just outgunned. They were dealing with something beyond their understanding. The communications room buzzed with activity as dozens of linguists worked at their stations. Chief Linguist Morvek paced back and forth, his anxiety growing with each passing minute. They had been trying to contact the mysterious ship for 3 hours with no response. "Try the Zentari greeting protocols again," he ordered, "and add the mathematical sequences." His team had already broadcast messages in over 8,000 different languages. They had tried everything from ancient trade languages to modern, diplomatic codes. They sent mathematical formulas, music patterns, and even basic pictographs. But the strange ship remained completely silent. Lieutenant Zixara looked up from her console. "Sir, should we try the old ceremonial languages, the ones from the historical archives?" "Do it," Morvek replied. "Try everything we have." The room filled with the sounds of different alien languages as the team broadcast one message after another. Some sounded like musical tones, others like grinding metal. Each language represented a different species, a different culture, a different way of thinking. Suddenly, all the chatter stopped. A clear voice came through the speakers, speaking in a language none of them had ever heard before. "This is Captain Kim of the ship Horizon. We're just passing through." The voice was calm and relaxed, like someone ordering food at a restaurant. There was no excitement, no concern, no surprise. It was the most casual first contact in galactic history. Translator Velsina nearly fell out of her chair. She was the Empire's best language expert, fluent in over 12,000 dialects. But this language was completely new to her. The sounds were strange, the rhythm different from anything she knew. "Can you understand it?" Morvek asked urgently. Velsina's hands flew over her keyboard as she ran the voice through every analysis program they had. "The structure is unlike anything in our database, but there are patterns. Give me a few minutes." The voice spoke again, this time slower. "I repeat, this is Captain Kim. We mean no harm. We are simply traveling through your space." "There," Velsina exclaimed. "The repetition helps. The language uses similar grammatical structures to some of the older trade languages, but the vocabulary is completely unique." "Admiral Zormek's voice crackled over the intercom. "Can you respond to them?" Velsina hesitated. "I can try, sir, but I'm not sure I'll get the pronunciation right." She cleared her throat and spoke slowly into the microphone, attempting to copy the strange sounds she had heard. Her words came out clumsy and broken, but she managed to ask a simple question about their intentions. The response came immediately, and this time there was a hint of amusement in the voice. "Your pronunciation needs work, but I understand you. We are explorers returning home after a long journey. We will be gone soon." Returning home, Velsina whispered to herself. That implied they had been somewhere else, somewhere far away. But their technology was so advanced, where could they possibly call home? Captain Kim's voice continued. "We apologize for any concern we may have caused. We were not expecting to encounter anyone in this region." The casual tone was almost insulting. This being was talking to the mighty Empire like they were just another obstacle in the road. There was no fear, no respect, no acknowledgement of the Empire's power. They're not impressed by us at all, Moravec realized with growing unease. Dr. Nexvara had not slept in 2 days. The Empire's top scientist sat hunched over her workstation, analyzing every piece of data they had collected about the mysterious ship. What she was discovering made her question everything she knew about physics and technology. "This is impossible," she muttered for the 100th time, rubbing her tired eyes. Her assistant, Dr. Colton, looked up from his own console. "What did you find now?" "Look at these propulsion readings," Nexavara said, pointing at her screen. "The ship isn't pushing itself through space. It's making space move around it. It's like the universe is bending to let the ship pass through." Colten frowned. "That would require energy levels beyond anything we can measure. Our most powerful reactors couldn't even come close." "That's just the beginning. Watch this." Nexavara pulled up a video recording of the ship's movements. "See how it turns? It's not using thrusters or momentum. It's literally changing the direction of space-time itself." The recording showed the ship making a sharp 90-degree turn without slowing down. Any normal vessel would have been torn apart by the forces involved, but this ship moved as smoothly, as if it were floating in calm water. Dr. Rix Modal, the Empire's weapons expert, joined their discussion. "I've been analyzing their defensive capabilities. They're not using shields or armor. They don't need them." "What do you mean?" Nexavara asked. "Their hull exists in multiple dimensions at once. Our weapons would pass right through it. It's like trying to shoot a shadow." The implications were terrifying. The Empire's most powerful battleships carried weapons that could crack planets in half. Their Nova bombs could destroy entire star systems. But none of it would work against this single mysterious ship. "How is that even possible?" Colton whispered. "The technology is beyond our understanding," Rix Modal replied. "We're like children with wooden sticks trying to fight someone with laser weapons." Dr. Nexvara pulled up another set of readings. "But here's the strangest part. I've been analyzing the materials we detected from their hull. The atomic structure shows signs of incredible age." "How old are we talking?" Colton asked. "Millions of years. Maybe tens of millions, but that's impossible because the materials also show signs of recent construction. It's like they're both ancient and brand new at the same time." The scientists stared at each other in confusion. Everything about this ship contradicted known science. It was as if the builders had access to technologies that the Empire couldn't even imagine. "I ran the data through our historical archives," Nexavara continued. "There are mentions in some of our oldest texts about a race of beings who could manipulate time and space. They were called the First Builders." "Those are just myths," Colton protested, "are they? Look at this evidence. We're not dealing with some new species that just discovered space travel. We're dealing with something that has been around far longer than our entire civilization." The room fell quiet as the scientists absorbed this information. They had always believed the Empire was the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had conquered countless worlds and absorbed the technologies of hundreds of different species. But now they realized they were nothing compared to whoever had built this ship. They weren't the masters of the galaxy, they were just the latest. Children playing with toys they didn't understand. Archivist Kelmara had spent her entire life studying the Empire's oldest records. Deep in the underground vaults beneath the capital city, she kept thousands of ancient texts that most people had forgotten. When the request came from High Command to search for any mention of humans, she thought it would be a simple task. She was wrong. "Computer, search all historical databases for the term human," she commanded. The ancient computer hummed to life. its processors working through millions of documents. After several minutes, results began to appear on her screen. What she saw made her hands tremble. The first reference was from a text over 50,000 years old. It spoke of beings called the First Ones, who walked between the stars when the galaxy was young. According to the ancient writers, these First Ones had a strange name for themselves: humans. "This can't be right," Kelmara whispered. She pulled up more documents. Text after text mentioned these mysterious humans. They were described as the original star travelers, the ones who first learned to move between worlds. Some stories said they created the first star maps. Others claimed they built the ancient jump gates that connected distant systems. But the most disturbing stories spoke of their power. One text, written by the long-extinct Mordani race, described humans as shapers of worlds. It claimed they could change the very structure of planets with their will. Another document spoke of human ships that could appear and disappear like ghosts, moving faster than light itself. Kelmara's communication device buzzed. "Have you found anything?" asked Dr. Nexvara from the science department. "You need to see this," Kelmara replied. "I'm sending you the files now." Within minutes, a team of historians and scientists had gathered in the archive vault. They read through document after document, each one more incredible than the last. "Look at this," said Dr. Colton, pointing to an ancient star chart. "This shows the locations of all inhabited worlds in our sector, but it was drawn 30,000 years before most of these species even developed space travel." "And here," added another researcher, "this text describes the Great Departure. It says the humans decided to leave known space and explore beyond the galaxy's edge. They promised to return someday." The pieces began falling into place. Captain Kim's casual attitude, the ship's impossible technology, the way they seemed completely unimpressed by the Empire's power, it all made sense now. "We're not dealing with aliens," Kelmara said quietly. "We're dealing with our ancestors." The realization hit everyone like a physical blow. Every species in the Empire had legends about the First Ones, the beings who taught them about fire, agriculture, and eventually space travel. They had always assumed these were just myths, stories made up to explain their origins. But the myths were true. Humans weren't just another species. They were the original species, the ones who had spread life throughout the galaxy before disappearing into the unknown. "That's why Captain Kim sounded so bored," Dr. Nexvara said. "To them, we're just children playing with the toys they left behind." The Empire had built its power by conquering other worlds and absorbing their technologies. They had always believed they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, but now they understood the truth. They were living in a galaxy that humans had built long before any of them existed, and now, after thousands of years, the builders had returned home. Admiral Zormek stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his massive fleet assembled in formation. 200 warships, the pride of the Empire's military, stretched out across space like a wall of steel and death. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Together, they represented the most powerful fighting force in the galaxy. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced his communications officer. Zormek nodded grimly. He knew what the ancient text said about humans, but he refused to believe his empire was helpless. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had defeated every enemy they had ever faced. One small ship, no matter how old or advanced, could not stand against the might of 200 battleships. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. We advanced together, full battle formation. The massive armada began moving forward, their engines creating a light show that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, armed with plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and shield generators that could withstand the blast of a dying star. But as they approached the human vessel, something strange happened. The mysterious ship didn't react at all. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the target shows no signs of defensive preparations, no shields activating, no weapons charging, no evasive maneuvers." Zormek frowned. Even the most overconfident enemy would at least raise their shields when facing a fleet this size. "Are you certain?" "Positive, sir. They're just sitting there." Through the view screen, Zormek could see the human ship floating peacefully in space. It looked almost relaxed, like a person sitting in a comfortable chair. There was no sign of panic or preparation for battle. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're picking up radio chatter from the human ship. They're talking to each other." "Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with the sound of casual conversation. The humans were speaking in their strange language, but the translation computer was working better now. "Did you remember to bring the tea?" asked a voice that sounded like Captain Kim. "Of course," replied another voice, this one belonging to a woman. "Earl Grey, just like you like it." "Excellent. This might take a while. These Empire ships move so slowly." Zormek's face turned dark with anger. They were discussing tea while facing the most powerful fleet in galactic history. The insult was unbearable. "Sir," whispered his tactical officer, should we attack?" The Admiral hesitated. Something about this situation felt wrong. The humans were too calm, too relaxed. It was like they knew something he didn't. "Admiral," came Captain Kim's voice over the radio, "I can see you're bringing quite a few friends. That's a nice fleet you have there. Very impressive formation." The casual compliment somehow made Zormek feel worse. It was like being patted on the head by a parent who was proud of their child's drawing. "We mean no harm," Captain Kim continued. "We're just passing through. There's no need for all this drama." "They're mocking us," growled the tactical officer, but Zormek was beginning to understand. The humans weren't preparing for battle because they didn't need to. They weren't worried about facing 200 warships because those ships posed no threat to them. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Zormek wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Zormek gave the order he would regret. For the rest of his life, all ships opened fire. 200 warships unleashed hell at once. Plasma beams that could melt through solid rock streaked across space. Quantum torpedoes capable of cracking planets launched from every ship. The combined firepower was enough to destroy an entire solar system. The human ship didn't move. It didn't dodge, didn't activate shields, didn't fire back. It just sat there as if nothing was happening. Then something impossible occurred. Every weapon blast simply stopped in mid-space, frozen like insects trapped in amber. The deadly beams hung motionless just a few hundred meters from the human vessel. "What's happening?" Zormek demanded. His tactical officer stared at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, our weapons have just stopped. They're not moving forward or backward. They're just hanging there." Captain Kim's voice came over the radio, still calm and relaxed. "That's quite a light show you've put on. Very colorful, but I think we've seen enough." The human ship pulsed once. It wasn't bright or dramatic. Just a gentle wave of energy that spread out in all directions like ripples on a pond. When the pulse reached the Imperial fleet, everything went dark. Every ship shut down at exactly the same moment. Engines died, weapons powered off, life support, systems stopped working, and even the emergency lighting went out. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy became nothing more than floating metal coffins in the darkness of space. On Zormek's flagship, the only sound was the panicked breathing of his crew. Emergency power should have kicked in automatically, but nothing worked. Not even their personal communicators or wrist computers functioned. In the complete silence, Captain Kim's voice somehow reached every ship in the fleet. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, as if the human was speaking directly into their minds. "Your technology is quite interesting," Kim said, and there was genuine appreciation in his voice. "Very creative use of plasma dynamics. The quantum torpedo design is particularly clever. We helped your ancestors build the first versions about 50,000 years ago." Zormek tried to speak, but found his throat dry. Around him, his officers sat frozen in their chairs, afraid to even breathe too loudly. "The basic principles are still sound," Kim continued, "but you've been working with the same fundamental limitations for millennia. Perhaps it's time for an upgrade." Another pulse emanated from the human ship, gentler than the first. Suddenly, every Imperial vessel came back to life. Lights flickered on, engines hummed to power, and life support systems resumed their quiet operation. But something had changed. The weapons that had been frozen in space were gone, simply vanished without a trace. More importantly, Every Imperial officer could feel that their ships were different now. Better. The engines ran smoother, the computers processed faster, and systems they had never seen before were now active on their control panels. "There," Kim said with satisfaction. "That should help. Your ships will be much more efficient now. Consider it a gift from family." Admiral Zormek looked around his bridge. His crew stared at their upgraded instruments with a mixture of wonder and terror. In 17 seconds, the humans had demonstrated they could destroy the entire Imperial fleet without effort. Instead, they had made them stronger. The message was clear. "We could have destroyed you, but we chose to help you instead." The emergency session had been going on for 12 hours. In the Grand Council chamber of the Imperial Palace, representatives from every corner of the Empire argued, shouted, and pleaded with each other. But Emperor Voxathen sat silent on his throne, reading the same ancient document over and over again. "Your Majesty," pleaded General Mordek, "we cannot simply retreat. The Empire has never backed down from anyone. Our reputation across the galaxy depends on our strength." "Our strength?" The Emperor finally spoke, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "General, they turned off our entire fleet like switching off a light. What strength do we have against beings who can rewrite reality itself?" The council chamber fell quiet. Everyone had heard the reports from Admiral Zormek. 200 warships reduced to helpless metal shells in 17 seconds, then upgraded and improved as if they were children's toys that needed fixing. "But Your Majesty," protested Minister Kexaval, "if we withdraw every species in the galaxy, we'll see it as weakness. Our enemies will think we can be defeated." The Emperor held up the ancient document he had been reading. "Do you know what this is?" The council members shook their heads. "It's Protocol 7, written by the very first emperor of our civilization over 30,000 years ago. It's been hidden in the deepest archives, considered a myth by most scholars." He began to read aloud. "Should the first ones ever return to claim their birthright, all forces of the Empire shall withdraw beyond the outer rim and await their guidance. The children must make way for the parents' return." "Surely you don't believe those old stories," scoffed Admiral Techmore. "I didn't," the Emperor replied. "Until today. Until I saw ships that move without engines, weapons that can freeze time. Itself and beings who speak of our technology like proud grandparents watching their grandchildren play." Across the Empire, similar conversations were taking place. On military bases, generals received orders they couldn't believe. In government buildings, officials scrambled to understand policies that had been forgotten for millennia. The order was simple but unprecedented: complete withdrawal from a 500 light-year radius around human space. Every ship, every military base, every listening post was to be abandoned immediately. "Sir," asked Colonel Raxvan on the frontier world of Kepler-7, "what should we tell the troops? They're asking why we're running from a single ship." His commanding officer, General Yultara, stared out at the stars. "Tell them we're not running. We're showing respect." The withdrawal began within hours. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, and entire colonial governments packed up and moved. Deeper into Imperial space, it was the largest military movement in the Empire's history, but it wasn't just about military strategy. Ancient customs that had been dormant for centuries suddenly became relevant again. Temples that had been used for storage were cleaned and reopened. Priests who had studied the old texts found themselves in high demand as advisors. On the capital world, elderly scholars worked through the night translating forgotten languages. They searched for any instruction, any guidance about how to behave when the first ones returned. "Look at this," said archivist Kelmara, pointing to a passage in an ancient text. "It says, 'When the Star Walkers return, let all lesser beings clear the path before them, for they are the gardeners returning to tend their garden.'" The empire that had conquered half the galaxy was voluntarily making itself smaller. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. They were the children, and their parents had come home. 6 months had changed everything. The galaxy that once trembled at the mention of the Empire's mighty fleets now operated under a completely different set of rules. Trade routes shifted, governments restructured, and species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves working together. Emperor Voxathen stood on his palace balcony, looking up at the night sky. The stars seemed different now, friendlier somehow. Reports came in daily from across the galaxy, and each one told the same story. Humanity was back, and they were helping. "Your Majesty," said his aide, Minister Kexville, approaching with the latest reports. "We've received word from the Zelkari system. Captain Kim's ship appeared there yesterday." "What happened?" the Emperor asked, though he already suspected the answer would be good news. The Zelkari had been fighting a plague for 3 years, something that was killing their crops and causing mass starvation. Captain Kim spent 2 hours with their scientists and gave them a simple solution. The plague is gone, and their harvest this year will be the largest in their history. The Emperor nodded. It was the same pattern everywhere. Human ships would appear, usually just one at a time, and solve problems that had plagued entire civilizations. 4 generations. They never asked for payment, never demanded territory or resources. They helped and then moved on. "What about the Mordani conflict?" the Emperor asked. "Resolved." Captain Lee appeared between their fleets just as they were about to begin a war that would have lasted decades. She convinced both sides to share the disputed mining rights. Apparently, she showed them how to extract 3 times more resources from the asteroid belt using methods they'd never considered. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Zormek commanded a very different fleet than he had 6 months ago. The ships that humans had upgraded were now the most advanced vessels in the Imperial Navy. But more importantly, his officers had learned new ways of thinking about problems. "Sir," reported his science officer, "we've successfully used the human navigation techniques to reduce our travel time by 60%. What used to take us weeks now takes just days." Zormek smiled. The humans hadn't just upgraded their ships, they had upgraded their understanding of how the universe worked. Simple changes to their engine configurations allowed them to work with space-time rather than fighting against it. Across the galaxy, children grew up hearing new bedtime stories. Instead of tales about conquering enemies and taking their resources, parents told stories about the Starwalkers who traveled between worlds, helping anyone who needed it. Dr. Nexivara had become the Empire's leading expert on human technology, though she freely admitted she understood only a tiny fraction of it. "It's like they've learned to work with the universe instead of against it," she explained to her students. "Every solution they offer is elegant, simple, and works in harmony with natural laws we're still discovering." The fear that had gripped the galaxy 6 months ago had transformed into something else: relief. For thousands of years, every species had struggled alone, fighting for resources and territory. Now they knew that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, their ancestors watched over them. Pirates thought twice before attacking merchant ships, knowing that a human vessel might appear to stop them. Dictators found their plans failing, as human advisors quietly helped oppressed populations. Wars ended before they could truly begin. The galaxy had learned to sleep peacefully, knowing that the gardeners had returned to tend their garden once again.